How's it going, everybody? It's Robert and Austin with Gas Money, back with another episode of Gas Money Mentions. And this week's guest is Lorenzo Luna. And funny story, we actually went to high school with Lorenzo, and we hadn't really kept in touch too much recently. But Austin ended up going out to Las Vegas and getting in touch with him there. Turns out he's working there right now, and we decided to catch up a little bit and get him on the podcast. So, first of all, Lorenzo, pleasure having you today. If you want, go ahead and talk about yourself a little bit. Basically what you did in high school, what brought you to where you are today, and what you're doing right now.
Sure, Rob. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Yeah, I met up with Austin the other week when he was in Vegas. It was a pretty good surprise to see someone else from Davidson out here. Don't get many visitors yet. But yeah, high school, let's see, 5 years ago. So I don't know, in high school, I was always drawn to more of the businessy kind of classes, more career-oriented classes. Like I remember I really liked accounting, which it sounds really boring, but I took that sophomore year. I was the only sophomore in that class. Uh, I did a job kind of program. So I would work part-time while going to school. And that was great because it really gets you that experience while you're in high school. Because to get a job, you need experience. So what better way to do it while you have to go to school, and you get paid too. So
Exactly.
if there's a program like that, definitely take advantage of it. Have you guys
Awesome.
done
And
something like that?
I remember in high school, they had, was it the career center that you did that through?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always looked at that as like great opportunities because when I was in high school, my plan was to become an actuarial scientist, and with that, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Obviously, getting ready for the exams, really having that passion for math, and at the same time, that's when we started Gas Money, which is kind of funny. So I was kind of on that two-way road where I could either do some career center stuff for actuarial science, or take the route which I ended up taking, is starting a business with Austin, mowing some lawns, making some money, and then obviously that's kind of transformed into what it is today. But yeah, so with the career center stuff you were doing, is that was that what you're working on right now? Did that kind of transition into you working with MGM, or how did that kind of transition happen?
Yeah, so no, I worked as a clerk at a roofing company. So I was basically just at a desk answering phones, and it was pretty boring to be honest. But getting to go home at noon every day, eating lunch at home, and going to get paid was pretty great. But no, I went to the University of Michigan, and I didn't really know what I wanted to study going into it. But I chose economics because it's a great major because even though it is broad, it gives you some analytical skills that you can apply to any field. And so while I was looking for jobs coming upon graduation, I was applying to a lot of finance kind of roles. I even self-studied for a financial securities exam through FINRA, and I passed that. But then I took a step back and I wanted to see, something I could really get excited about going into as I transitioned post grad. And I saw this opportunity from MGM, and they're the ones who run all the casinos, well, a lot of the casinos on the strip, and they have one in Detroit. And it was in food and beverage. I always loved to cook, so I figured I might be interested in this. So I applied and luckily I got it. It's a pretty small program. There's only three other people in the program on the food and beverage side. But if you're interested in hotels or gaming, there's a track for you too. So it's
Awesome. Yeah, that's
interesting.
awesome. And I guess one more question too that you could relate to. So for me, I go to Florida State University, so down in Tallahassee, Florida. And when I was making my decision where I wanted to go to college, that was kind of tough because all my family's in Michigan. Didn't really have anybody down in Florida, so that was a large factor in my decision. But at the same time, I feel like when you're young is really the best time to go out and try somewhere new. So how's that been kind of adapting to the Vegas life coming from a small town called Davis, Michigan?
Yeah, so Vegas is certainly different. When I moved out here, it was in the middle of July. So for a stretch here, we had every day at 115 degrees. And during that stretch, I was also working outside at the pool at Mandalay Bay. So it was quite the welcome. But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely when you go anywhere that's far from home, you do get homesick a little bit. I don't think it matters who you are, you will feel that, but it's pretty exciting. Um, it could be stressful at times, but that comes with the territory. And
100%.
just gotta remind yourself that it's okay to pace yourself. Like when you move somewhere new, some things you gotta consider are, well, what doctors am I gonna go to? What dentist am I gonna go to? Where am I gonna go to the gym? So there's those little details that you're so used to uh, in your everyday life that you gotta think about, and it's kind of starting over a little bit. So you gotta make sure you give yourself some time to adjust.
Yeah,
How have
exactly.
you adjusted to Florida? You said Tallahassee, right?
Yeah, so it's funny when I first applied, I thought it was going to be down like on the ocean, either Atlantic or Gulf side. Thought there was going to be palm trees everywhere, hot weather. I ended up getting the hot weather and the palm trees, got no ocean. So Tallahassee is actually in the Panhandle, so it almost feels a lot more like Georgia than it does Florida. But the nice thing is, it doesn't get as much bad weather, which is one of the things I was kind of scared of when I was going down to Florida State because obviously you get a lot of hurricanes down here. But I guess the transition from Davison was crazy because Tallahassee, I'm sure U of M similar. The undergraduates here, I think it's like 40,000. So yeah, and on top of that too, it's the capital city. So there were so many people down here when I moved in, like adapting to the city life, sitting in traffic all the time. It was a huge change. And then also just the availability of connections down here is so much bigger than the hometown. And I'm sure you kind of got that too from Vegas. Like there's so many people you'll just meet, whether you're like out at a bar or you're going to class, walking down the sidewalk and you see somebody who is from your class or something. There's a lot of different people down here you can talk to. And I don't know how it is in Vegas, but everybody in Florida that I've met so far seems much more approachable. And I don't know if it's just the hot weather or what it is, but it's been a lot easier to like communicate with people down here, meet new people and make new friends. And I guess you were talking about the homesickness too. Like I struggled with that for the first couple months because I had nobody from Michigan that I knew down here. Like every single person that I've met at Florida State has been a new person from like before I knew from high school, obviously. So that's been kind of a change. Like I almost got to redefine myself in a way, like stop doing the things that I didn't enjoy in high school, choose who my friends were, kind of put that group together. So that was kind of fun, just kind of having a fresh start, which I think you talked about a little bit too. It's almost like a fresh start. You get to meet new people, and most of all, I kind of reshaped my whole entire future plans. Which, if I wouldn't have gone to Florida State, who knows what I'd be doing right now. So I'm glad everything worked out how it did.
What are you studying at Florida State currently?
So I'm doing marketing right now, but that's a funny story because I mentioned earlier started with actuarial science, and with the actuarial, that's such a rigorous degree and career where there's so much work that goes into it. I got to the point like halfway through freshman semester where I wasn't sure if I would be able to balance both actuarial science and gas money. So I did a lot of thinking. Obviously, talked with Austin a lot, and I was like, man, like with the actuarial science career, I have a guaranteed like $90,000, $100,000 starting salary for most of the jobs there. But at the same time, I'm so passionate about gas money. I really like entrepreneurship and business. I just couldn't make that decision to commit. So I ended up switching into a general business major, tried out finance management, and then eventually ended on marketing because really marketing is like one of the biggest aspects of business I've found. Not only do you learn how to market a company and a product, but you also learn how to market yourself. So I've taken a couple sales classes, social media classes, and overall I'm happy with the decision. But that's one of the things that's tough in college is you can only graduate with one major. Obviously you can do a double major, but it has a significant impact on what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So I try to
Yeah,
choose marketing because it's pretty broad.
I guess that fits really well into what you're pursuing right now. Have you been able to use anything you learned in class in real life on your business, I guess, money?
Yeah, 100%. So I guess one of my current classes we're doing right now is social media marketing. So it's basically like a simulation where a company, you kind of act as an intern. A company will give you a certain budget each week, tell you who to target, give you all the relevant insights, and then you like get to run a campaign, get to see how the conversions are doing. So that's been super helpful. And then my two other favorite classes so far have been sales and negotiation, both of which obviously really big for business. So in my sales class, we learned about elevator pitches, and then talking to people, learning how to build pain points, sell them things. And that ended up helping me a lot when we did our pitch competition here at the Entrepreneurship College at Florida State. Just learning how to very concisely deliver a pitch to somebody. And then with the negotiation class, on the other hand, it's all about learning how to maneuver deals, making sure both sides get a little bit of leeway, making sure you can agree on stuff. So overall, it's been a lot more helpful than I thought it would be. When I first started the marketing major, I figured, hey, this will be a kind of safety net in case gas money doesn't go as planned, or if I need a career when I start right when I graduate. But now it's ended up being a lot more relevant to what I'm doing than I expected. So that's pretty cool.
Very
And then
nice.
I guess so with your job out in Vegas, what was the training like? Did you have to have certain classes or prerequisites done? Like, was that attached directly to your major, or did you have to go through kind of a training program before you got started over there?
So the current program I'm in is completely separated from what I studied. So a lot of my peers in this program studied hospitality management, whether that be hotels or restaurant management here at UNLV. But there's a few of us that have majored in some less obvious majors like business admin, among others. But economics can really help in this business because it helps you understand strategic thinking, like competition, and what you need to do to set yourself from competition to get that demand going, to build your demand. Also, when you think economically, a big part about being a manager is controlling your costs. So that's basically what economics is. It's making decisions on your limited resources. So your limited resource is your budget and the people you have, your human resources. So the best way to allocate those is where the good managers get separated by the bad, really. And then another aspect of economics that we don't really price the items, but it's interesting to think about because pricing, you would think that, oh, well, I always want to charge lower prices than my competitors to maximize my profit. Well, no, that's not always the case. You can actually raise your prices and that will maximize your profit instead, right? So let's, even though you'll have less sales, like numbers of sales, the revenue will make up for.
Yeah,
It's very funny.
exactly.
It's very, very funny you say that because Vegas is so specific with that exact approach from what I've seen, and I'm sure from what everybody else has seen that is went to Vegas either from a small town they're not used to. I'm sure big cities are normally always more expensive, but man, the last time I went to Vegas, I was, I believe, 13 or 14 years old, family trip, and it was fun, but at the same time you don't get the whole Vegas thing when you're way under being a minor. um but what I realized this time going by myself, I was like, wow, explain to me the prices. So they're not just raising prices in comparison to their competitors, they're doubling or even tripling. What kind of approach do you believe, like with them doing that? Like you said, there's probably less sales. um at the same time, it makes up for it in the long run. Now, how much do they want to make up for it, and why does it have to be double or triple? Is it because of the overhead? Is it because of just what Vegas is all about? Or, I mean, because I know it's changed over the years, over the last couple decades, with pricing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Austin. So Vegas is a really special town in the way that uh, the Vegas that coming from out of state, it's a mecca of tourism and gambling and Sin City, right?
Right,
So,
right.
whether that be gluttony, we have some amazing restaurants here, gambling, a lot of bars, but in any sort of situation where you have tourists coming in or some sort of entertainment, the willingness to pay from your consumers is going to be elevated, right? So they're willing to spend the money because they're on vacation. And that's where you can charge more money than, let's say, a local diner in your hometown. Because they're on vacation, they're looking to have fun, they're looking to get that experience. So that's why they're willing to spend the big bucks. And also, in a way, if you're staying on the strip and you took a taxi from the airport, you don't really have a car to go around far from the strip, or you might not even want to go off the strip. And that's a locality kind of bias because everything around you is expensive and you have to do more effort to go to those cheaper areas.
That's, I mean, even going out there and you're there for a week, you know, you're going to be there for a week. For what I was doing, I was there for the real estate convention that we talked about. But you got to eat, you got to drink water, or, you know, if you're going to go out and you're going to, you know, get into the alcohol, all that stuff, like you're going to go out with people, you're going to make connections, and that might be at a bar, that might be at a casino. When it comes down to it, when you're out to a certain place like that, they're providing all of those things, obviously at a higher price, but it's not like they're just raising the price because they can. They do provide the value. And with that being said, the value, the entertainment that they're providing, I seriously think there's probably not a there might be a similar place to it in the US, but there's nothing like Vegas. I was seeing, you know, certain places, certain infrastructure, certain architectural buildings, and, you know, the Ferris wheel out there, things like that, that it would be impossible for a lot of people in, you know, a small town or even in some big cities in the US, but they do it. And that's, I think that's even more validation of why they can economically be the way that they are.
Yeah, I was at the Bellagio yesterday actually, and that building is amazing. It feels like you're in a palace. If you've never been there before, I highly recommend it. It's like very beautiful. They have a conservatory where it's kind of sculptures, but it's all made out of real flowers. And
Wow.
they have restaurants from the top chefs in the world, like Wolfgang Puck. They have some former Michelin starred restaurants, but under the same roof, you have amazing gambling area. We have the sports books, which you can go bet on sports, and they have these huge flat screens. But also, there's some areas where you can go catch a show. Like there's a lot of Cirque du Soleil shows, especially at MGM properties that you can go see. So you can have dinner, a show, and social life via the bars all under one roof. So that's very uh, lucrative. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
that under one roof concept, Austin was talking to me about that a lot because I've never been out to Vegas or anywhere, kind of nowhere compares there, obviously. But he was saying like his hotel was connected all through overpasses and stuff to get to the casinos, to get to the event center. And there's a lot of psychology that goes behind that too. And that's what I wanted to talk about next. Like in with MGM, like do they teach a lot about kind of the psychology of almost not trapping people, but getting people so immersed in the events that are going on, all the things that are going on around them, where they kind of forget about the financial aspect that they're spending money at the casino and spending money on food. I feel like that's got to be a big part of it too.
A slot machine trick is when you put your money in a slot, sometimes it won't come up as money. It'll transform the money amount into credits. So you're not thinking that I'm spending $10 on the spin. I'm spending 10 credits, right? So
Right.
it's that psychological kind of aspect that can drive more gambling revenue.
Yeah. I mean, I've even seen some videos. I personally, and I think Rob is kind of the same way. I mean, we've all gambled, obviously, but when I went out there, I don't know if it was because I just didn't have enough time or whatever, but at the same time, I just saw so many people. You know, the slots are just filled. I mean, the table games, they're busy, but man, the slots are just filled with so many different people at all times of the day and all times of the night. I didn't spend a penny when I went out there on gambling, but I have realized that there is so much psychology that goes into it, and it even comes down to, I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and he had a I don't want to call him a gambling expert, but just a guy that's kind of an expert on algorithms and things like that. And I guess casinos, a lot of Vegas casinos, and I'm sure casinos all everywhere else that they are, use very similar algorithms to even social media. Social media, they have the likes, they have you scrolling, they have you staying on there for a very long, extended amount of time. And with the casinos, there's the effects, there's the colors, there's all of those different things that keep the dopamine running. And we talk about the dopamine and just psychology in general all the time. And have you had, is there any stories or anybody or any observations that you've had of just how captivated people get when they go out there just by everything going on, all the lights, all the music, all the entertainment, all the gambling?
I would say just the way that almost every casino is designed. For example, I mean, there's no clocks in the casino, and
Right.
that makes time go by fast. But each property has its own smell. And it's kind of, you wouldn't think of that as a marketing tactic, but it's another way to differentiate themselves from another property. I think so. The Aria to me smells sweet, like a candy shop in a way. Mandalay Bay smells like pumpkin spice. And the Delano, which is the building connected to it, smells like herbs, like
Yeah,
lemon
and that's
herbs. Yeah.
it's
That's very
crazy hearing
interesting.
about that because Disney does the same thing at least at Disney World and Disneyland, like mainly in the food places. Like if there's somewhere selling pretzels or popcorn, like that's just not natural smell coming out. Like I've seen online, they have actual like vents that just pumps like popcorn smell out. So you walk by, you smell it, you want to go in, and it's crazy because everybody always thinks of like sight and hearing, or yeah, sight and hearing as the main sentences that are marketed to, but when you get in places like MGM casinos or Disney World, where there's so much going on, they're even going for your scent to try and get you to go in there. And then you eat the food; it tastes so good. And I guess with you, like, so are you doing any cooking right now in the job, or is that mainly just the beverages? Like, how's your rotation look like your everyday routine? I guess.
Yeah, so what's really interesting about the program is that I get to see almost every aspect of food and beverage in MGM, right? So I started off at the pool, and they have a restaurant out there. I was at the Mandalay Bay for that. And then beverage, the bars, of course. And then I was at a day club at the pool for a day or two, Maria. And the last few weeks have been a culmination of quick serve restaurant, buffet. And I'm currently at casual dining. So you certainly see the nuances between every business model and different things to look out for. Currently, I'm at a brunch restaurant called Salt and Ivy. I have only been there for 2 days, and my schedule to this week is 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. But the week prior, I was at Din Tai Fung. Now that's a Taiwanese dumpling house, and I was on the closing shift, so I was 4 p.m. to midnight. So every week it's something new, whether a new venue, a new property, or a new schedule. So it's always changing.
So
Yeah, and
with
I
that
feel
being
like that would
said,
be. Go ahead, Austin.
yeah, I was just gonna say, so that's honestly pretty cool. I mean, it's very demanding for sure because you have to be very accepting to change. With meeting the new people that are working, and for it to be every week, that's very demanding. What are you doing? On the shift, because like we talked a little bit about it. You're managing. I guess elaborate a little bit more on that.
So yeah, what's great about the program, it really gives you a chance to immerse yourself as if you were a manager. So we're managers in training, and they just want us to learn. So we have learning plans, and our job is to shadow, whether it be the managers, but also we have that chance to shadow the frontline workers. So we get a holistic view of how a venue operates. So for example, um, a casino beverage, I shadowed the cocktail servers, the porters, which will run different liquors to the bars, stock the bars. Actually depends what shift you're on, the porter's job will change. So it's important to see that aspect. I saw how the huge warehouse department kind of integrates with the restaurants and beverage as a whole. So getting a chance to see each individual position gives you a really good view of how the operations work, how things get done.
Right.
Exactly. And that variability aspect is something that I think is parallel between what you're doing and entrepreneurship because like when I was deciding if I wanted to become an actuarial scientist, with that, a lot of times you're doing the same exact thing 5 days a week for however long you want to do that until you get the next promotion or switch companies. And I didn't really like that idea of repetitiveness. Like in high school, I was always doing something new. In college, I'm always trying to do something new, like learning a new sport, going to a new club meeting, just trying to get as many new experiences as I can. And I feel like with entrepreneurship, especially, there's always new things going on. Like in Austin and I's roles right now as the sole founders of Gas Money, like we've got to do all the accounting, all the marketing, all the management, all the communication with clients. And it's never the same day. Like every time we wake up, it's something different. And we love that personally. And I guess kind of relating that to what you're doing, I feel like it'd be very fun to have that variability each day, kind of see how each individual aspect of MGM works, how people are interacting with it. And I guess if you want to just elaborate a little more on how much how much you've enjoyed that so far, like compared to if you were sitting at like a desk job, like, I don't know what your original plans were, but I'm sure there was probably some differences in your workday than you originally planned on. Is that true?
Yeah, so originally, I thought it'd be, 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with that. Honestly, sometimes I would prefer 9 to 5 because the hours can vary a lot. But definitely week to week, rotation to rotation, it does change a lot because you're dealing with new people, and these teams can range anywhere from 30 to 70 to 100 plus people, right? So it's definitely learning how to deal with people, different personalities, different things like that. Um, Different guests too. Decent part of being a manager is trying to improve the guest experience, and whether the guest has a problem with their food or the service, you have to hear them out. And that goes back to learning how to deal with people. So you want to hear them out and really listen to what they have to say, because sometimes they just want to be heard, right?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
from there, you can decide what the best course of action is. Because at the end of the day, we want them coming back to our restaurant or MGM as a whole, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And then Austin, real quick, turn on your phone camera again. I think it went off, so that way it'll show up
Okay.
when you're talking. But
All right.
yeah, I guess talking about that too. Um, so how has I guess the adaptation been moving to Las Vegas? Like, I don't know anything about this, and you don't have to be transparent if you don't want to, but like, how's the cost of living and stuff there? Like, is it just mainly the casinos and the strip that's expensive, or is just Las Vegas in general expensive? How have those costs of living compared to a small town, for example, Davis, Michigan?
Yeah, so I actually like talking about this because I'm a big personal finance guy. I have been since high school. Me and Ellie Timmons did that financial literacy project senior year, and we
Mhm.
got to go to Decca Nationals in Florida, so that was pretty cool. But Vegas is honestly very similar to Ann Arbor. It's slightly more expensive in terms of rent. Everything else is pretty much the same, except recently our gas has been more expensive than some places in New York, honestly. A week or two ago it was like 5.50 a gallon.
Oh
But
man,
the rent isn't too bad. It's not San Francisco and New York City prices. You're paying 3 grand a month. No, I'm able to have my own place, my own apartment. I have to have roommates, and it's somewhat affordable for such a big city. And I
yeah,
think Vegas, a lot of people are moving here because it is accessible in that way compared to the bigger cities, like New York, like Los Angeles. And
Yeah,
oh yeah, go ahead.
I've no, I was just gonna say I've seen a lot of people, Vegas being one of them, with either business people or I've seen a lot of comedians and entertainers going there for different reasons, and Texas being a big one, Florida being a big one. You don't really hear much about a lot of people going to California, New York, those main hotspots that used to be the big city to go to. And I just wondered that was a huge question by Rob, and keep elaborating on this, because you think of Vegas, you go there on vacation or you go there on a business trip, and you get all the prices that it has to offer, which is normally very high. So the cost of living, and then also I'm sure you know about trying to find the places to be affordable to eat. I guess grocery shopping, like how is that? And continue elaborating. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, so I may be a little biased on the cost of food because MGM, a lot of their properties have an employee dining room, right? So per shift you get a meal, but it's decent food. Like it'll be chicken on the bone, rice, a stew of some sort. They have soft serve coffees. So usually I'm only focused on an additional meal when I get off. But in terms of groceries, it's slightly more expensive than Davison, but it's not too bad. Restaurants, it's more like Ann Arbor, where just going to a decent restaurant is going to be $20 a person without drinks, of course. But that kind of pushes me to cook more food at home, but also to focus my spend when I do go out to make sure it's a really good restaurant. And I will spend that $30, $40 a person, but make sure that it's good quality food. So in comparing Las Vegas to other cities, we do have a world-class food scene here. Now, there's a lot of great restaurants off the strip that I would highly recommend. A few weeks ago, I was at 1228 Main, and that's Wolfgang Puck's new restaurant in the Arts District. And what's great about them is that for a Wolfgang Puck restaurant, it's not marketed as such. So the price point is a little lower than his average offerings. And they make their own breads, their own croissants in-house by hand. They make their own butter. So it's very high quality food for a good price point, for sure. Have you, what restaurants have you been to when you were here last week?
So I'll be honest, I didn't really eat much. We were so busy so I had basically general sessions from, I'd be up at 7 a.m., get there by 8. We'd basically have a short break between 12:30 and 1:30. And so we'd have about an hour. Normally we would just be quick, and there's the food courts, all that stuff. So there wasn't really much of the restaurants at those points. I did go to a couple Mexican restaurants in the connection between the Mandalay Bay and the Luxor. I'm not sure if you have seen any of those. It's in like that shopping little strip between the two.
I've been there a few times, but
yeah,
I haven't really gotten to know the locations in that shopping area though.
Right. So yeah, a lot of it was quick stuff, and I'm okay with that because we didn't have much time. At the same time, they were still pretty expensive in comparison to a restaurant, a nice restaurant over in Michigan. What I wanted to do is wrap this back around, which is this is definitely one of the things on a lot of podcasts. They like to keep the current conversation going, but I think we missed your journey through high school and going to U of M, and what you were going for, how U of M was, how Ann Arbor was, and your whole idea of that in comparison now to being out of state. I know that was kind of a loaded question, but take as much time as you want.
Sure. Let's see. So in high school, so being from a smaller town in Davison, there's definitely not as much to see. Our restaurants are kind of limited. We have a few steakhouses, some diners, and a lot of fast food. And lately, more fast food. I wish they'd create a restaurant that wasn't a chain while they're building so many of them. But it's a good experience growing up because it's a very tight-knit community. And I missed that a little bit when I moved out here in Vegas and on the West Coast, where people don't say hi to you as you walk by them. They're more reserved, want to keep to themselves, right? So it's just a preference thing. So there's a pros and cons. It's not that Vegas is always better than Davison. It's just that it's different, and you got to decide what you like, right?
Mm-hmm.
through high school. So I got into crypto in the junior year because I was really into investing in personal finance, and I really like innovation. So anything new, I'll get my hands on it and kind of tinker with it. And I actually worked on that little project of mine all through college. And I eventually exited in 2021 before the second big crash. And the first time money I made working in high school, I would put into Bitcoin and other stuff. And long story short, the first cycle I was in, I lost 70% of my money. So I was dumb, I was naive. But the second cycle, I really learned from being in the market for 2 or 3 years prior, and I was able to exit with some modest profits instead of losing again.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
Robert, I
Go ahead.
recently learned you did crypto. I didn't know. When did you get?
Yeah. So I dabbled in it a little bit, and my biggest mistake was not doing enough research before. And I'm sure it sounds like you did a lot of research, and I kind of was more of like the hype train. You're gonna laugh at this, but Dogecoin was my first like crypto investment, and it was way before it ever had hopes of getting to $1 or anything. At the time, like I just saw a couple TikToks about people saying like, man, like this Dogecoin's so cheap right now. I think it was at like it was like 0.00028 or something like that, like a fraction of a cent. And my buddy Alex and I, we've had Alex on here. He works with us a lot. We were both like, hey man, like let's put in. I think we put in like 50 or $100 in a Dogecoin, and it turned out to be like a couple thousand shares, maybe more. And then I remember we were at Alex's house. I think Austin was there, and it was like spiking. It was going up to moving like closer to 1 cent. And we were like, oh, dude, like, are we going to hold it? Are we going to sell it? And we ended up the next day selling off all our shares. I think we made like a little under $100 in profit, which at the time was like, oh my gosh. And then fast forward like 3 or 4 months, whenever that big growth happened, we didn't have any Dogecoin left. Like we had sold out already, and it was climbing up through like 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents. And
Yeah, at
it
that
was like,
point,
man,
people
if
were
we would have,
making they were making 20K on something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
we did the
But
math, we would have made at least a couple $1,000s from that. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about with you. Like, in my personal experience, I've invested in like I have a couple Litecoin. I did a little bit of Bitcoin, like obviously fractional shares, but I'm still holding on to a little bit. Obviously, crypto is pretty volatile, and the future is pretty unknown. But in your experience, like before you invested, had you done a lot of research with it? I know you talked about being interested in finance and investment. So what was that kind of process like before you invested and kind of managing your portfolio?
Yeah, so crypto gave me the opportunity to kind of it was more accessible, right? Because back then, like stocks weren't as, let me rephrase it. Back then, there wasn't really anything that I could get excited about. And then I learned about crypto. I'm like, oh, well, it's brand new. I feel like the risk outweighs the reward here. So I'll get into it. Now, prior to that, I read some books on investing in the stock market. That's all good and all, but my first real money account was crypto. I really got to own it. So all the articles I could read, all the videos I could find, good and bad, by the way. A lot of videos are just trash on YouTube. There's someone trying to sell you a course and they're not profitable themselves, or they lost all their money, but they sound smart. They talk about taking ice baths and all, and how you can make 10 grand a day. But you definitely want to stick to those good sources, and that's a problem. It's hard to tell what those good sources are when you're entering into a new space. So it takes a lot of trial and error too when you're getting involved in something new. Like I made a few mistakes in crypto, especially back in the ICO days. So that's when this mania of people creating new coins and selling opportunities to get on the ground level, a lot of those gapped up and sold to zero in the last
Yeah.
couple of years. So it's just, being a good learner, I would say, because though my account was up really big or decently big in the first run, I was down 70%. I didn't know, right? So the second time around, I really collected those lessons and was disciplined enough to sell, because let's say when Bitcoin went from 3 to 20,000, you're like, all right, I'm gonna sell when it gets to 30, and it gets to 30, and then you don't have a plan. You're stuck in it, and then it gaps down 10%. Oh, I'll wait till it goes back up, right? And it's just having that trust that, okay, I need to take money off the table, being risk first. So definitely to anyone looking to get into investing, I would highly encourage you to think risk first, right? So it's not about making money, as a lot of people say. It's not. It's about not losing money.
Exactly.
I like that. I like that. What were, I guess, some of the on your first round, like you were saying, where walk us through that round of some of the ones that you invested in, if they were coins, if they were different actual cryptocurrencies. I know you mentioned Bitcoin. I'm sure that, I don't know if you were in Ethereum, but things like that. Were you in? I guess what were you in first and why? And then what did you get into next and why?
Sure. So let's see. The first crypto I ever bought was Bitcoin, and that's because it's the biggest one. I mean, it's the brand name of the space. When you think crypto, you think Bitcoin, right? So that was the natural place to start. And then from there, I kind of got, I don't know, greedy might be a good word. Like, oh, well, this coin's newer. It's not as old as Bitcoin. It might grow more than Bitcoin, right? So that's a big place where I went wrong, because Bitcoin is kind of the standard, of the space. And it's kind of like the index of the crypto space. So that's why I went wrong. I started buying other smaller coins like Ethereum, like a lot of the coins I bought are probably at zero right now. Ones you never heard of, like Rialto. Have you ever heard of Rialto coin?
I have not.
No, exactly.
I know Rob went into Litecoin. That's really the only one that is not very heard of, I guess. I'm not sure how that's doing, Rob, but
Yeah, not that good.
Now,
yeah.
Litecoin and Ethereum aren't too bad, because those are those bigger market cap names, and they kind of
Right.
move. They're kind of like the standard, right? But once you get into a coin that has the market cap value of $1 million or less, and it's probably a scam, then you're just gambling at that point.
Mhm.
So then from there, Bitcoin was going up, and I wasn't seeing much growth in my portfolio because I was in these trash names. And then when I started going into Bitcoin, these smaller coins started to shoot up, known as the alt cycle. And just going back and forth, I didn't really capture those gains had I just stayed in Bitcoin. So when we crashed from 20,000 to 3,000 again, I really repositioned all my holdings. I sold off all my bad coins, all the smaller coins. I really concentrated on Bitcoin. And even though Ethereum outperformed Bitcoin and all that, it's just the expected. It's just that there's definitely a higher probability that Bitcoin was going to get me a high enough return. That was okay if I didn't take the lower probability trade and bought some no-name coin that no one's heard about before, right? So it's thinking in terms of probabilities and expected value when you're deploying your money. And
Exactly.
the biggest part to making money is, besides the risk management, besides the buying, is you have to sell it eventually. And that's where I see a lot of people going awry. Is, let's say you got lucky, you're up $1 million in GameStop stock, which a lot of people were in that mania. The problem is selling, because if you never sell, you're going to ride it all the way back down. And that's when greed really takes its claws grip into you, and you're blinded by it. It can blind you. And then sooner or later, your $1 million ability to retire is gone. So it's
Yeah.
really important to not get investing to get rich quick. It's, to grow your money at a modest rate and be able to make sound decisions. So you want to keep greed out of it as much as possible. for
Yeah, and
sure.
I think a lot of people could compare investing in crypto for the purpose of getting rich quick, or investing like I did before doing research, almost as a form of gambling. Because if it's just like stocks, if you don't do the proper research beforehand, obviously you can't predict how the market's going to do or how a certain coin's going to do. But you got to do a little bit of research and, like you said, be safe and modest with it. Because if you're just throwing money in and there's a pump that goes up, like you mentioned, GameStop, if you've got that kind of gambler's mindset where you're like, all right, well, I'm up $1 million right now, but why not make it 2 million? Why not hold out a little longer? There's that point of maturity where you have to realize you got to take your gains at some point, and I think that's what a lot of people miss, especially in the more short-term investment spheres such as crypto. And another question I had too, like I need to do a lot more research on crypto, but are there any, I guess Bitcoin could be one of them, that are like long-term holders, or is mostly crypto like buying and selling on a frequent basis? Or does it kind of just depend on the market?
Definitely, if you're not a trader, like a professional trader, I wouldn't recommend getting into Bitcoin or crypto, trading it day to day, because it's so volatile that if you don't have an established system, you're going to get chopped around, stopped out all the time. You'll be down 50% before you know it. So definitely that it's the longer term moves or the higher probability moves, right? So
Yeah.
it's a safer bet, and for what you're gaining from the higher returns in crypto, it makes sense. That's a good one. I'm sorry, what else?
And I'll just kind of add on to that. So, with how many cryptos there have been, and how many there will be, and how many are still being created as we speak right now, why do you, and this is, subjective, this is very probably opinionated, but with the amount of research, with the amount of, just experience you've had in crypto and Bitcoin, why Bitcoin? Why is it the one that is, made it through and made it as long as it has, no matter how many gaps it's had, no matter how many downturns, no matter how many high upturns? Why do you think that it might be either the crypto or has been the crypto?
So Bitcoin is the oldest cryptocurrency. It was the first. So its creator, which is anonymous, created a technology, which is the blockchain. And that's the foundation for all of crypto. A strength of Bitcoin, besides it having the first mover advantage, is the brand. I mean, Bitcoin's a brand when you think about it at the end of the day. Like, it has its own associations with it in a way. Even though it doesn't do any advertising, it doesn't need to. It's all word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
The creator is anonymous, which is good in a way, because if we knew who the creator was, that leaves a risk that they could be targeted and the system can get corrupted. And another thing that gives Bitcoin more value than other cryptos is that the trusts from it having a brand, I mean, the culmination of all the factors, it has a trust factor that the other names don't have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really, I've heard of this on many other podcasts by some very smart people, is the underlying trust of the system is where the main value comes from. The trust of the blockchain being secure, the last not get hacked, is the value.
Yeah, and Bitcoin, compared to the other cryptos, has the best infrastructure for that right now. Kind of that reputation almost.
For sure.
Yeah, and I guess let me know if this is too complex. You don't have to answer.
Yeah.
But if you know, I'm always been so curious on how like crypto mining works. Like, do you know how that process works? And if so, like, kind of explain to us how people get crypto mines going and what that means kind of for crypto in general, because I know that's how most crypto works.
Sure. So I'm not really knowledgeable about mining. I just know some very basic things. So miners use GPUs to mine the coin. And what these computers are doing is they're basically solving complex math problems. And the fastest one gets prize. So that's known as a block reward. And a block, I believe, is a part of the blockchain that comprises of transactions. So you're basically processing transactions in a way. I could be wrong, but that's my best approximation of what I've seen. So you're getting paid to process those transactions, but also secure the network. And a lot of people will join a mining pool. So that's when you submit your computing power to a group, and the group distributes the profit. Back in the day, it was much easier to mine Bitcoin because you could get, whole Bitcoins with a basic computer. But now the competition and the level is so high that you need a high-powered device just to get a few fractions.
And that's what I was going to ask next. So it sounds like it started with just a basic computer, and what I've seen, there's different coins you can mine with certain devices. With these devices, it's very confusing to me just because I don't have the knowledge. But it's almost like things that look like a Wi-Fi router or things that stand, as tall as a fridge that hook up to, like you said, some type of network or a group that they're able to, use their computing power to then split the profits at the end of the day. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you know about the actual devices, or do you not know much about that?
Sure. So those sketchy space heaters that mine Bitcoin while you're using them, I wouldn't recommend because it's kind of like a gimmick. It's kind of like a sales pitch. Oh, you can mine crypto too. Where in reality, if you just put your money in bonds at 5%, you make a better return on investment than buying that device, right? So it's more of a novelty, more of a gimmick kind of thing. It's not really a serious investment. You have to pay for electricity and such, and the computers in those things aren't the amount or scale you need to make some serious money. You're not in a country where it's beneficial, where the electricity is very cheap. So again, it's kind of like a tchotchke that way.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess kind of pivoting the conversation a little bit, and this is just out of curiosity since we're kind of on a similar topic. But just with your experience in Vegas and MGM and everything, have you guys worked with like AI at all? Or have you had any experience with that, either using it for personal use like ChatGPT, or have you heard anything from the casinos themselves talking about how they could implement it to make up better programs? I guess like what's your experience and or opinion on AI right now?
From an MGM perspective, I haven't heard any discussion about that. Now, it's not really indicative of whether they're talking about or implementing it. I don't really have any knowledge about that. But I personally dabbled in ChatGPT, and it's good to use as a search engine in a way because it does all that reading for you. But it doesn't really, I think AI can be overrated in the current situation because it doesn't really do like in-depth thinking. It basically scrapes the internet and it takes chunks of words that have already been written, and it sends it to you in this concise way. So it's really good for doing research, for getting ideas, for brainstorming, but it's not really good for, let's say, hey AI, hey ChatGPT, trade for me on the stock market.
Yeah, exactly. It's
But
almost
it's
like a tool more than anything, and you do have to fact check it a lot of times. And Austin and I actually we subscribe to ChatGPT 4, so it's $20 a month, which some people might think is a lot to pay for an AI tool. And for us, it's actually been pretty helpful because on the fourth version, it allows you to upload spreadsheets and data. So we've been getting a couple like analytics sheets from either our marketing campaign, seeing who's been clicking, what the audience looks like, and then also for conversions on our app. And basically, we'll upload the spreadsheet, and the first prompt we give it is, "Tell me more about this data." And it's crazy. Like, it'll show you real time what code it's writing, and then it'll explain the different trends, explain the variables. So that just like seeing that happen kind of blows my mind because my first experience, like you mentioned, is just kind of having a small conversation with it. It pulls different text from different sources on the internet, and it's pretty cool. But it's basically like having a conversation with Google. But with what we've been using it for recently, with kind of like analyzing data and stuff, I feel like eventually that could increase the productivity of a lot of places that are just hiring data analysts and people that need to write the code for it. I could see it definitely in the near future, either, I don't think fully replacing, but definitely helping people move a little faster. So our opinion on it's kind of just for efficiency. I know a lot of people say that AI is going to take over some jobs in the future, and right now I don't really see that as a big possibility, but I think it just depends on how far it advances, how quickly, and also how humans think of it in general. It's kind of one of those weird topics.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good tool for getting that work optimized or done in a fast way that might not be the most interesting. Like, for example, writing copywriting material for your business. They'll give you a good base, they'll give you a good first draft, and then you can go in and choose what you like, what you don't like. And instead of starting from scratch, you have a basis to build from. So that's really good too, because I mean, personally, just getting started, like writing a paper. Now, I never used it to write a paper, but just as an example, like getting started on that task is very big. But if you can have a foundation, it really gets those juices flowing, and you use that creative momentum for sure. Have you used Chat GPT for any of your marketing by chance?
Yeah, we actually have. Basically, we teach it what gas money is, teach us the goal of the marketing campaign. And one thing we've learned is prompting is huge, especially with ChatGPT. So we'll tell it, your task is to take on the role of a marketing strategist and give us advice for how to structure this campaign, give it the basics of the campaign. And then we usually, up until now, we've had it write copy for us. So it does a pretty good job. I mean, you can give it a word count. You can have it add emojis if you want. We've also used it on our Gas Money Gear website, which is our merchandise, to help us with product descriptions, where we'll basically copy and paste the blank template product description into ChatGPT, tell it to spice it up a little bit, and then it spits out pretty compelling copy for a product description. So that's pretty cool. And then I guess one more thing we're going to start doing that we've kind of researched a little bit is actual blog posts with ChatGPT, where you can give it an idea, like pretty basic, like something that relates to our industry, maybe like what are the best freelance apps right now, have it incorporate gas money in. And then I know a lot of companies right now are either using ChatGPT for basic ideation for blog posts, like you mentioned, kind of getting the juices flowing, or just full out having it write blogs and then maybe doing a few edits. But I don't know. I feel like it's definitely good to use as a tool to kind of get the ideas started. If you're doing a blank canvas, you have a business idea, you're not sure exactly where to get started, you can tell ChatGPT about it, have it give you some advice. And I think it's a great way to get started with either a project or a business idea.
Now, while we're on the topic of gas money, I'm personally curious. Now, obviously, you guys, you're working on a lot of facets of the business at once because that's what it requires of you. But what are some top, let's say, limit down to the top two things you need to focus on? They'll give you the biggest bang for your buck in terms of growth and progress of the business.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. Austin, if you want to go first.
I'll give my side, you can give your side. So hopefully they're going to be the same too, because we're partners, but we'll see. After it's been 2021, the fall of 2021 is when we launched our MVP. So basically it came from what you saw in high school, where we were just mowing lawns and things like that. And we called it the paper model. So we had paper invoices that we would give to new contractors, or we would use ourselves. We would go out on jobs, fill out a gas money invoice, have the client pay us a cash or check. And then at the end of the week, we would collect everybody's payments and, basically do our payroll at the end of the week and pay everybody out. Through that whole process, and then figuring out that we could then scale this into a gig platform for young adults, which is now the Gas Money Services app, launching that MVP, we realized that through then until now, it's come down to probably onboarding. So getting mainly contractors, so workers, figuring out how to show a lot of young people where, you know, there's social media, TikTok specifically, YouTube, where there's so many things out there. Obviously, there's the courses, like you mentioned. There's just salespeople galore on their new product, their new platform. We're trying to show them that it's not a gimmick, it's not a scam, and at the end of the day, you can actually make some real money doing this. And so, figuring out how to onboard more contractors and basically scale and spread to new areas in a better way. And then I think the other huge hardship is managing consistency. So we know what we have is a platform, you know, that does a lot of great things for young people, and also a lot of great things for our residential clients, and hopefully in the next 6 months or so, commercial clients. But at the end of the day, it's being consistent. So it's been Rob and I since the beginning. We've had people come in and out. We've had marketing people. We've had you know, different uh, connections and mentors that have helped us in certain ways that are in the tech industry. But at the end of the day, it's Rob and I. So we're like he was saying at the beginning, accounting, social media marketing, our gas money gear, the merchandise side, the promotions for the clients, the promotions for the contractors, having that double-edged sword of a company where you have to promote two sides. You have two customers instead of just a product company with a large one customer, if you will. So yeah, those are definitely my two main things that I think I've learned in the past almost 3 years now since we launched the platform. And also, I guess I'll add a third one. It's being non-technical founders. We didn't code this. We know what we know about code because of what we learned through outsourcing the code. And I think that has definitely been very, very difficult and had a lot of friction for conversations and figuring out, you know, when you're talking to people, when you're asked questions, how to answer certain questions, how to ask them to elaborate a little bit more so we can actually understand what they're talking about, because it's an entirely new sector that I think a lot of people either from the small town of Davison, Michigan, graduating from there and having a lawn care business, transferring it into a gig service platform and realizing, oh shit, we're a tech company now. And so that's been a huge factor as well. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job of explaining. I guess I'll combine two of yours that you mentioned and then also add another one from my perspective. So I would definitely say user experience and consistency. So providing a consistent user experience that's positive is definitely one of the biggest priorities we need to focus on. And not just for the platform, but also on social media, you know, keeping relevant posts to keep people engaged. We want to focus a lot more on content, which is why we do the podcast, just providing that value through either educational or perspective, where
Now,
some
real,
kids who, yeah, go ahead.
real quick, Rob. So when you say consistency, is that in users? Which user are you talking about? Your customer or your contractors? Consistency with the products that your customers are getting in terms of their lawn care or shoveling quality, or the consistency on how easy it is for your contractors to do their job, to find work, etc.
Yeah. So I would say I'm talking about both right now, but it's kind of hard to group those together because especially in a company like this where it's two-sided, kind of like that Uber, that DoorDash, you need to make sure it's balanced, but at the same time, one should always take a little bit of priority over the other. And it's funny, when we started, we were a lot more focused on consistency for clients, making sure they were getting good work, making sure that everybody was showing up on time, doing the job correctly. And we ended up getting a lot more clients using our platform than we had contractors, which at first seemed like a great thing. But now when it comes to trying to scale, we've found that we have more clients that are looking for work or looking for jobs that need to be done than actual contractors that are able to provide those jobs. And at the end of the day, what we've realized through this transition and kind of growing our company into something that can be scalable is our true team for gas money is not only us, but it's also the contractors that we're bringing on board, these young adults that are trying to start making money, trying to become entrepreneurs, and trying to create that almost team aspect. And if I had to choose between one of them, I would say that definitely the consistency on the contractor side is our main focus, making sure that we can build that team aspect where if you're working with gas money, you're a part of our family. You can feel free to reach out to any contractors you're working with, share stories with each other, motivate each other. And I think at the end of the day, company culture is one of the best assets that a brand can have. And that's what Austin and I have been trying to build. And I believe if we can build a good culture of contractors that do hard work, are signing up on the platform, or are consistently talking with one another, motivating one another, I feel like as a result of that, inevitably clients will begin to come on the platform because they're getting such good experiences from our contractors. So that's kind of our goal right now, is keeping that balance going. But in terms of establishing that balance so we can scale, I think the contractors should definitely come first.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe a good place to establish that consistency for your contractors is, maybe do you guys give them any resources on how to get better or how to do some of these services so they can really make sure they're providing a great service? And it kind of standardizes that across all your contractors, I guess.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Austin, did you want to go?
Yeah. So that's actually so what we've done so far, since it's been localized since the beginning, Genesee County, surrounding counties, we've still so the onboarding process. So a contractor wants to sign up. They reach out to us through one of our sign up forms and or message us on through one of our ads. And then we hop on a virtual call, talk to them, make sure they know what gas money is all about, how it works, all the great perks about it, the flexibility. You charge your own rates, you work as much as you want, as little as you want, you do the jobs you want. But at the end of the day, what we are really focused on, and actually one of the next steps in our business, we're kind of figuring out a name for it, but providing that content, providing those courses might not be the right word, but walkthroughs and things like that, like you were talking about, on how to do certain things. Let's say lawn mowing, how to mow a lawn correctly, how to put stripes in the lawn to make it look good, how to, at the end of the day, you got to sharpen your lawnmower blades. You have to mix your mix gas correctly for your weed whacker. So all of those different educational aspects, we want to put into a gas money university, if you will, which will then be the next step that we weren't focused on from the beginning, which may have been somewhat of an error or a backfall that we could have had, but we were so focused on providing the best platform for young adults and making it easy enough that they can just join, go on our job pool, which is called the open jobs. There's a button right on the contractor's dashboard that shows up a list of jobs, and make money the next day after you sign up. With that being said, there's a lot of education that can make that service that much better. And so that's what we've learned also. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm sure that would make the top 5 lists of what we've learned that needs to happen in order to scale, in order to make gas money what we actually want it to end up being, is add that educational side as well.
And then in terms of getting more contractors, since your demand for the services outstrips the supply of contractors you have, which is a great problem to have in one sense. But are you finding that you're getting most of your contractors from like people personal connections, social media, speaking at high schools? Like, what's the best revenue so far that has worked for you? And then what are some things you're doing to kind of double down or also diversify that stream?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So when we first started out, it was mostly all word of mouth. We started, Austin and I, in high school. We brought a couple of our friends on, had them start working with us, and then they brought a couple of their friends. So it was kind of that word of mouth concept. And I believe that's one of the best forms of marketing, because you don't have to pay for it and you're getting quality referrals, which is one of the next best things for recruiting contractors. You want to make sure you're getting quality leads. So once we kind of had that established, we used that for our beta testing when we first launched the app. It was mostly us and our friends doing it. And then we kind of hit that transition period where we're starting to get more jobs. We've kind of maxed out our referrals for the friends that gave us in high school. And then we started doing social media marketing. And that's kind of the phase we're in now. So we run ads on Facebook, we run ads on Snapchat. And I know Austin kind of brushed over this, but basically our onboarding process is we'll have somebody click on our ad, download the app, and then we basically set up a video call with them. So that way, first of all, you can tell if they're a good worker or not by if they're willing to hop on a virtual interview, usually only like 10 to 15 minutes. And that's kind of our vetting process to, first of all, make sure they're a student or a young adult who's trying to earn some money, see what kind of services they want to offer, see if they have friends that are interested in signing up. And then from there, we help them set their account up and then get them started on the app. And I think as we kind of go to new regions, that's a great way to get new contractors. It is a little tough because just people on the internet you're spending ad money on trying to recruit. And eventually our goal is to get back to that word of mouth on a larger scale. And I think that's what you see a lot with like Uber or DoorDash, where one of your friends will try it out. And you'll be like, hey, I've made this much money this week from doing DoorDash, or for our example, I've made this much money this week doing gas money. So our eventual goal would be to kind of have that self-sustaining model where we still are running ads for both clients and contractors, but it's to the point where both sides, contractors and clients, are getting referrals from friends, referrals from family. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I think that word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of advertising there can be. So that's definitely our end goal, is kind of have that referral program in place. And speaking of that, I think it would be awesome to have some sort of reward system where if you refer a friend and your friend has a couple jobs, maybe each of you gets like a $25 gift card or something like that, just to kind of incentivize that work staying on the platform.
Yeah, I like your vetting process for sure, because it makes sure that they're willing to put in the work, but it also personalizes the process. I mean, getting to speak with the founders of the company at an early stage will definitely give them confidence that this is legitimate, that you can make money from this, from being a contract for us. And it gives that level of personality that, you know, DoorDash doesn't have or Grubhub doesn't have. So I really commend you for that.
And at the end of the day, and we appreciate that a lot, man. At the end of the day, obviously with scale, you want to try to automate as much as you can. But if you have the vision for what your company can be, if you want that personalized approach, if you want that family team feel, you don't feel that when you sign up for DoorDash. You don't feel that when you sign up for Uber. You know, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure there's not a place on the Uber app as a driver that you can just talk to different Uber drivers and, you know, go out to coffee and feel familiar with them and understand who you're working around. No, on those platforms, it's individualized. You're trying to just make money and turn the app off when you're done. What we want to do is have that different approach where we started so localized and saw that it basically made the local community just feel that much better that, oh yeah, I had gas money out. They're all young adults, like it's awesome. And it just kind of builds up certain communities that, if that with scale, could also build up, you know, other communities across the country, potentially across the world. And that's definitely some of our goals. But I know we've been talking, and if you have any more questions about gas money, we're definitely willing to answer. I definitely have a couple more questions about that finance thing that you did in high school with Ellie.
Sure.
If you wanted to walk through that, because that's very, very interesting to me, because we also wanted to, with the Gas Money University side, we also wanted to, in the near future, partner with either high schools or colleges or both to try to also start some type of either course or program, which can further the young adults' education that they're not getting in standard education, which comes down, when it comes down to it, that finance thing, I'm sure, added a lot, because I didn't learn much about investing or finance or anything like that in high school. So talk to us about that.
Sure. So before I go into that,
Yeah.
personally, I think it'd be great, instead of having to build something from the ground up while you're still focusing on the main business, if you could find a partnership. Now that kind of goes into what we did in the project, but maybe reach out to Dave Ramsey. He's a very community, religious oriented guy. He might be interested in you guys and sharing that financial literacy with the people who are willing to, go out and mow those lawns or plow that snow, so that might be something to think about. But the project me and Ellie did was a financial literacy promotion project. So going into it, we both knew that financial literacy was lacking amongst our demographic, but we didn't know exactly where. So we reached out to the great people at Alga Credit Union. They do so much for the community. They're so great to work with. We reached out to them, and they're very generous with their time, and we met with them, and we really wanted to see what were some of the pain points that young adults have in trying to understand their finances and get them in order. So it's getting the expert in that knows more than you to really set the objectives of the project. And then from there, we created 3 video lessons about each of those pain points that they suggested. So it's very accessible. It's on YouTube. I tried looking for honestly the other day, but I couldn't find it. I don't know. But I'm sure it's on DTV somewhere. So that was a component. Another component, what else did we do? So that was the main thing, right? So we got together with DTV at Davidson High School with all their equipment and expertise. And we shot those videos. Also, we did like a guerrilla marketing tactic, I remember, because I wore this sign that kind of advertised compound interest and the wonders of it. So, DECA is a marketing organization, so it makes sense. We had to put that in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But getting back to the learning process again that we've talked about a few times in this podcast is that you definitely want to do your due diligence and put the work in to understand the main points you need to focus on to get the best return for your work.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that approach it almost seems like you have that similar approach to everything you do in life. And I think investing can make full circle back to life, and then investing then can go out that knowledge, risk, I guess, just risk management in general, and your return management can also be a huge factor that if you bring that into your life, yes, a lot of people, they'll probably tell you, why do you think like that? It's boring. I just want to live life. Well, if you do think with structure, like you were just talking about, then you're going to have a much better approach on certain decisions in life. And at the end of the day, you're going to win more. So have you always had that idea on decision making, or when did that start and why?
I guess I learned that throughout high school, throughout college, and it's just kind of I like doing things efficiently. So how can I get the most done with the least amount of work, I guess. But also,
Right.
It's just a clear way of doing things, like kind of dividing your tasks. So, for example, recently when I was applying to jobs in college, it was very stressful because I would search jobs and apply to them all in the same time I was sitting down. But then I find when I compartmentalize certain tasks and just focus on that one at a time, it really keeps that brain fog away, right? So while you're doing it, you can think clearer. So that's where the idea of kind of really focusing on each task that'll give you those bigger returns it comes from. It's working efficiently, working in a way it doesn't require you to rest for a much longer period of time. So it's just that efficiency at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I find myself many times there's so many tasks, especially being in business. And I'm sure you feel the same way with what you're doing in investments and finance and everything that's going on, pretty much everything in life. You have to figure out, based on the tasks you have at hand, how to prioritize them, how to focus on one at a time, instead of what I'm guilty of lots of times is trying to multitask. And sometimes multitasking can be okay, but if you've got a day ahead of you where you just want to work all day and you try taking on multiple projects at once, it can be so confusing. You get that brain fog like you were talking about, and that's one of the things that Austin and I have tried to learn with running gas money and just life in general is it's really important to be able to prioritize your tasks, make a plan for how you're going to accomplish each one, and as you make your way throughout the day, getting tasks done by one, it's so much better than just taking a little bite out of each one and trying to eat the whole elephant, I guess, if you want to make a metaphor. But it definitely comes down to that time and schedule management and also discipline.
And it's definitely not a perfect thing. So I find myself when I shift my focus to something else, I do that rush trying to do everything at once, but I eventually end up in trying to, focus on one thing at a time. It's okay to not have that from the onset, because honestly, I don't have that often when I get started on something new. But it's just the idea that you'll end up there is important.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess, do you use like a calendar or anything, or how do you kind of manage your schedule day to day based on either work or personal things or both?
Yeah, so I like calendar apps a lot. Like I use Google Calendar and reminders at the same time. And it's just a good way to see what I have for the day, if I have any meetings, if I need to remember anything important, or if I did something earlier in the day that I need to remind myself that I did later in the day. It's just a good way to take that brain inventory and kind of take the load off on yourself for having to remember those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of off topic, kind of on topic, but one of my biggest pet peeves is when I'm talking to them and they said, "Oh, can you remind me this?" And I'm like, "No," like in my head, I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not really as invested in that as you. You should remind yourself."
Well, because you have all your stuff going on, so why do you have to, vouch for somebody else's thought process? And we've been
Sorry,
guilty of,
Mom.
what was that?
I said, "Sorry, Mom."
Oh, same here.
Stuff.
Oh man. No, we've been guilty of that for a long time, and I'm 22, Rob's 21. Obviously, we're not professional business owners yet. But it takes time, and having the idea that you will figure it out, like you were saying about compartmentalizing and figuring out that you will get to that point, no matter if you're on something new, if you're trying to learn something new. Obviously you're going to jump around to different thought processes, but having that idea that you will get to a point where you can manage one thing at a time. And so we're on the Google Workspace, and we bit the bullet. It costs money, but at the end of the day, is it going to cost you money or cost you efficiency? And you can always make more money, but at the end of the day, if you're not efficient enough, then you're never going to make the strides that you want to in life. And I think being very schedule driven and compartmentalized, like you were saying, it's very valuable to day to day, because days go by quick. If you have a full day, and if you're always chasing the day, then you'll never realize what you can actually do with all the time that you have. So if you have that schedule, if you have all of those structures set in place, and you stick with it and it works for you, then you can actually have the day kind of chase you in a sense, which I feel like a lot of people our age don't understand. But I think a podcast like this, I'm sure could help people understand.
And
Do you have any?
Frank here,
Yeah.
I mean, we're guilty of this too. I mean, we're not perfect. I mean, we all
Yeah.
deal with this. So it's just, having it in the back of your head that, that's once you get to that point where you can really get your thoughts in order, that's where you want to be. But we're not perfect for sure.
Right.
Exactly. But
Um,
yeah, I guess kind of wrapping it up too. I mean, it's been a great podcast so far, about an hour and a half in. This is a question we always ask towards the end, and if it stems more conversations, great. If not, we can wrap it up. But if you had to pinpoint, let's say, pinpoint one piece of advice for young adults in our shoes who are trying to navigate the world at a young age, not sure where they want to go, maybe have their plan set up, whether it's like we just talked about, learning and working on getting a better schedule management, whether it's learning how to communicate with people, whatever it may be, what would that one piece of advice be and why?
Good question. There's a lot of things, but I would say the one I would prioritize is definitely being flexible, right? So the largest difficulties I faced going from high school, then going to college, then going to adult life is the changes, and everything's changing all the time, you know. And oh, let me get my laptop here real quick plugged in. Sorry, guys.
No problem.
But it's just having that flexibility helps you deal with those changes, because they're overwhelming, right? You're worried about your future. You're worried about what can happen. It's just knowing that you're going to be okay, and if you can adapt, and that's definitely a skill to work on. And I'm still working on it, honestly. But it's just getting that started as soon as you can.
Exactly. And I mean, we're all so young still. Like when I was in high school, I thought 21 and 22, we were going to be old. We were going to be starting to slow down, but we're still in the beginning, man. And that's what we've, Austin and I have tried to realize is there's so much pressure put on you from society, from other businesses, from whatever you're doing in your career. There's a lot of pressure. And although it's good to have that pressure to motivate you to keep working and excelling, you also have to realize it's okay if you're not where you're at right now. Like every day, as long as you're making some progress, even if there's bad days where you don't make progress, we've got so much time ahead of us. And I'm not sure if you listen to Gary Vee at all, but he always talks about like even if you're 30 or 40 years old, you still got your whole life ahead of you. So I think that's what you gave is great advice, like learning how to be flexible, because sometimes there's change that needs to happen, and as humans, we're usually resistant to change when sometimes change can be the best thing for us.
Now, Rob, it's funny you bring up Gary Vee because I used to listen to him, but I'm not the biggest fan of him anymore. But we won't go into that. Maybe another day.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be on the podcast again because we still have some more catching up to do, and let us know, like reach out. We can hop on the phone, do all that stuff. But just to keep it short and sweet, I think we've been going for close to an hour and a half now. So this has been great, man. Thanks for hopping on. It was great to see you in Vegas. That was fun. Grabbing coffee at whatever time that was, 2 a.m. or something like that.
Fremont Street.
Yes, on Fremont Street. Exactly. No, thanks again. And yeah, let's wrap it up here. And I guess, as we always say at the end of the podcast, Rob, go get that gas money.
Sure.